Thanks for the introduction. I'm Sanjay Ingle. I'm a cloud solution architect at General Dynamics IT. I'm also a former Microsoft employee. So this is my contact information. And I really appreciate the opportunity to present here. So my talk is about modernizing legacy .NET app using containers in Azure. And this is some of the projects I've been currently working on. We have some DoD customers that have legacy .NET apps that haven't been touched in like 20 years. And in many cases, they don't know where the source code is. And in some cases, they have the UI in ASP.NET and then backend in Oracle. So they're asking us for guidance. Hey, GDIT, give us guidance. How do we modernize this .NET legacy app? So in this demo, I want to just explain what is that journey to the cloud looks like from a legacy .NET app to the cloud. And especially, I'm going to focus on containerization, the Windows containerization. I know containerized apps have been available in the Linux world for a while, and the Windows containers is pretty new, and we are all learning through it. My demo is going to focus on how to take an existing .NET app, a legacy app, and how to Dockerize it, and how to deploy it locally, and then take that image and deploy it to the cloud, and how that journey looks like. And I'm going to focus on what is called the Azure Container Instances, ACI. It's basically a managed service for containers where you don't have to provision VMs. And it's the journey to containers is very easy with Azure Container Instances, or ACI. And then I'm going to talk about some of the recommended platforms and various orchestration. So this is when we go to customer, you have a lot of .NET framework apps, like 4.5 or older, and typically, the easiest approach is, rehost them, put them in VM, use some of the migrate tools, but then what we found out is you're basically inheriting, one mess and you just putting in the cloud. You're not actually modernizing or re-architecting or having benefits of the cloud. So what I'm going to focus on is how do we modernize this existing app with little or no code change and deploy to the cloud, so you get some of the inherent cloud benefits like scalability, high availability, storage, and monitoring. And what this is, I'm not going to focus on building like microservices or serverless architecture for now, because that's a huge topic, and that will take probably 2-3 hours to describe that. So that's what my demo is going to be focused on. As I already mentioned, the pros of modernizing by containers is, it's low deployment cost, because compared to VMs, containers are cheaper and they're more performant. And going to the previous talk, it really improves DevOps and productivity of a developer. And since containers are independent, they are packages, they have all the dependencies built in, so they're easily portable, and And if you use orchestration engines like ACS or Service Fabric or Kubernetes, you can really have a high availability architecture. And what I'm finding out, there's, at least in the Windows world, there's a huge learning curve for containers. So, going back to the DevOps topic, with containers, you cannot just one problem it solves is, hey, it works on a machine, So, if it works on your laptop, it'll work on AWS, it'll work on Azure, it'll work on Google Cloud. So containers solve that problem about, hey, it works on my dev machine and it's a production problem. So containers, they've been around for a while in the Linux world, and the Windows container is basically available pretty recently. So let me, with that, I'm just going to go to the demo. I'm going to show an existing app. Let me.
Your mouse is on the.
Let me ask. I need to change. So actually, I have this. One of the interesting about cloud is I have this VM running in the cloud right now, and so I have this VM running in the cloud. I have a legacy .NET app MVC. It's pretty standard, and to basically Dockerize it, there's really good tooling available within Visual Studio. All you have to do is right-click on the project and add, and there is this container orchestration support. So with that, since I've already done like a Docker support, you can choose different orchestration engine here. So I've already, I went ahead and already generated some of the file. So some of the files that's added is the Docker file. So basically, this tells you like you need to download this Microsoft ASP container image, and that's the source, and it's going to download to that working directory. And then you have a compose file that basically tells what the name of the image, the context, and the Docker file. And then there's a override file that tells about the environment, what ports need to be set up, what your networking looks like, and what have you. So within just a few clicks, you already have, you're basically containerizing your existing app, and you can just click on that and yeah, so that's your app, and you can go and set up a breakpoint. It's kind of hard to type with one hand.
You can use the mic for video typing.
Sure.
Just only for speaking. So it should be fine.
Sure. Thank you. So you can see there's you have your breakpoints and And so let me go some of the command line tools where, I want to show you what were some of the images that were created. So it basically lists all the images that were created, and you can also go and see what are some of the containers that are running. Thank you. So right now, what you've done is you have an existing app. You added some Docker artifacts to the existing app, and you deployed to your local registry. And the local registry is basically a Docker registry where, as you can see, that's already running. And you can basically switch between a Linux container or Windows container. So since I'm already running Windows container, it has that. So I'm already signed into Docker Hub. So my next step is I'm going to deploy this to Azure. And one of the things that Azure offers is ACR, is Azure Container Registry. That's where it stores all the images. So I already created a registry ahead of time. So I'll go and show you that.
You might be running out of time. So
Okay.
like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've already, as I mentioned, I've already created this registry. And there's a really great tooling here because you can, there's like a quick start guide where it explains how do you log into the container registry. It gives you the code. It gives you the code to push to the registry. You can pull the image. So once you have your image in the registry, which I've already done ahead of time, you can go and I can show you that it's here, the repository, and it basically lists all the images you have already uploaded here. So once that you have your image in a registry, you can basically deploy it to different Azure services, and one of them is called Azure Container Instances. That's basically a managed service provided by Azure, where you don't have to spin up your own VM, and you can deploy your images there. So I've already gone ahead and created this registry ahead of time, and I can just show you some of the deployment I've done since we're running out of time here. So this is this is the Azure container instance, and as you can see, there's a container here, and it lists all the containers I've deployed, and so I've just deployed this. It's in running state, and like a VM, it has a FQDN, so it's pretty nifty, and there's all this tooling is available. So I think I'll just stop there. And do you have more time, or?
You have time to wrap up. So
Okay.
definitely go to the slide.
Sure. So I covered this scenario here, going through the Docker registry and deploying it to Azure Container Instances. And so I just want to leave it with this. When it comes to Azure, there's a plethora of choices. And what many customers ask me is, well, where do I go, Sanjay? Where do I go? From a monolithic to the microservice architecture. So the answer is a typical consultant answer where it depends. So here are the different choices. You have Azure App Service. We have different orchestration like Kubernetes or Service Fabric. And you also have Azure Functions and Azure Batch. So I'll just wrap up there and answer any questions that you may have.
If you have legacy apps, how old can a legacy app be? Like 2003 server, running on 2003 server with IIS5? How old can a .NET app be?
The,
You can bring in
yeah,
here.
it could be any
If
any
you could
.NET.
repeat the question so those online can hear.
Sure. Yeah. So the question was, how old a .NET application can be? Can it be like Windows 2003 or older version of IIS? My understanding is, as long as is 4.5 and older, it should work. I've tested this with 4.5 and 3.5. I don't know what the oldest version of .NET was, but I think it should work.
It's the Windows runtime binaries that are powering it. So if the application runs on some sort of Windows flavor, it would. Sorry, I would just add that to your question. I mean, Docker essentially is running. We are talking about Windows containers, right? It's essentially running a Windows binary. So as long as that Windows binary can run in a Docker container, it doesn't matter which version of .NET you're running.
Yeah, good question. Thanks.
Sanjay, before you really decide on migrating to containers and then to cloud, do you kind of do some kind of code analysis? How the keys are application on premise, or just talking to any local registries or databases, or is it just purely manual? Because I saw a step where you said minimal code and pass, right? So who really does that? Is it something that you do manually, or do you use any tools to make that decision?
I'm sure there are tools available, a lot of code analysis tools available. But in my experience, sorry, I should repeat the question. So the question was, how do you, when you recommend a migration tool, do you do some kind of analysis, some kind of tool before you make a recommendation? In my experience, yes, I mean there are a plethora of tools available, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the individual application, because there's a lot of variations. The industry, if it's an accounting application or a manufacturing application, so it all boils down to the specific app.
What you meant to say is depends.
Yeah, it depends. Sure.
Yeah, one more question.
Kubernetes versus Docker, what's your opinion? And what's better? Okay. Kubernetes versus Docker, what's your opinion? What's better works for Azure?
Well, what Kubernetes is basically an orchestration engine, and Docker is where your container image is based off. So, I mean, basically everything is based on Docker. You want?
You're saying comparing Kubernetes to Docker Swarm, right?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, Docker Swarm. Sorry.
He's talking Docker. Well, I hope there are no Docker Swarm lovers in the room, but looks like Kubernetes seems to have, general consensus is that Kubernetes seems to have won that debate quite clearly, and that's seen through by what is being done in the Cloud Native Foundation, right? Everybody seems to be gravitating towards Kubernetes. In fact, if you look at Docker themselves, the Docker Enterprise product supports Kubernetes now, so they are also sort of joining the bandwagon. Okay.
And to add to that, I mean, Microsoft is also behind Kubernetes. You can use Kubernetes with Azure container instances as well.
So thank you. With that, we're going to ask our last speaker, John Nomoto from CGI Federal.